Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime. Listeners, a brief note before we begin today. This episode deals with the sexual abuse of children, including the rape and coerced spiritual marriage of girls as young as 12, 14, and 15, and contains references to a documented sexual assault recording, to the alleged sexual abuse of a young boy, to one incident of self-harm in custody. Please listen with care. It's late on a Monday night, the 28th of August, 2006. A Nevada state trooper is working Interstate 15, the long dark ribbon of road that runs north out of Las Vegas, past the Speedway and into the desert. He clocks a 2007 Cadillac Escalade. Red, late model, expensive. And there's something off about it. The temporary tag in the rear window, the paper plate issued out of Colorado, is partially hidden. And that's enough. He lights it up, and the SUV pulls over without a fuss. There are 3 people inside, a man and a woman in the back, and in the passenger seat, a tall, thin man, 6'3", maybe 6'4", who gives the trooper a name, but it's not his. What the trooper doesn't yet know, standing there on the shoulder with his flashlight, is that this thin man in the passenger seat has been the object of a nationwide manhunt. He doesn't know that there's more than $60,000 in cash bundled in the vehicle, that there are 2 women's wigs and a stack of cell phones, GPS units, and a photograph of the passenger standing beside his own father. He doesn't know that the man whose name he's just been given is, at that exact moment, one of the 10 most wanted fugitives in the United States. He just knows the plate was covered, and that the man looks, somehow, familiar. To understand the man that the trooper had just pulled over, what you would need to understand is the church that he ran. And to understand that church, you'd have to go back more than a century. The fundamentalists...
How old is this guy?
The Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the FLDS, broke away from mainstream Mormonism in 1890. The year the larger Latter-day Saint Church renounced polygamy. The fundamentalists refused to let it go. They believed then, and they believe now, that plural marriage, a man taking multiple wives, is the doorway to the highest heaven. And so they did what breakaway sects often do. They went somewhere remote and built their own world.
Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How many wives do you have?
Well, I would say 4.
What?
Andrew wears many hats in the house. So I have many wives and many husbands because he does it all. But in reality, he is just one human.
All right.
That's how I like it. Not to say there's anything necessarily wrong with polycules, but they should be consensual.
Well, you didn't even suggest that there was anything wrong with it. You just said that you like it to be just one.
Do you think you could do a polycule?
No, I don't even want to share with one person, let alone more than that.
I just think about how many emotions that would be to manage.
I've got enough.
Mm-hmm.
I've got enough emotions to manage.
This world set on the Utah-Arizona line in the twin towns of Hildale, Utah and Colorado City, Arizona. Locals called the area Short Creek, and at its peak, the church counted something close to 10,000 followers. It had its own homes, its own businesses, its own school, and crucially, its own financial trust that held the land those homes sat on. If you belonged, you had a place. If you were cast out, you could lose all of it. Your house, your job, your wife, your children. This was not an abstract threat. Former members of the FLDS would later testify that under Jeffs, The church routinely reassigned wives and children from one man to another, and that he cast out men he viewed as rivals. By one account, excommunicating around 60 members and breaking up some 300 families, stripping them of homes and property. The property itself ran through a church trust, and in 2005, amid allegations that Jeffs and other leaders had drained money from it, the state of Utah seized control of the FLDS's United Effort Plan Trust, valued at roughly $110 million. For decades, the man at the top of that pyramid was Rulon Jeffs. He'd been an accountant in Salt Lake City, a graduate of LDS Business College, before he rose through the priesthood and in 1986 became the president and prophet of the FLDS. To his people, the prophet wasn't a metaphor. The prophet was, in the language of the church itself, God's mouthpiece on earth to be obeyed completely and willingly. Rulon had, by various accounts, somewhere between 19 and 75 wives. Pretty big gap in potential number of wives, but that's what was reported by the Deseret News in 2002.
I think it's one of those things where, like, once you hit a certain threshold, what's one more? Because you can't even keep up with them. So, like, 1975, it's the same.
It's all the same. All the same. You know what I love about the story I'm telling you today is that Tony Goldwyn, that's his name, right? The president in Scandal.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a, like, Lifetime movie, I think, about this exact case. And I don't care what role he's in. He's so hot to me. That old man Fitz is just, I don't know.
I think that I've seen an episode of something about this case. So I keep trying to place it. Did you watch anything?
No, I didn't really for this one. I remembered the movie with Tony Goldwyn.
I'm sure that that's not what I watched.
And then I was able to find it and I was like, oh, okay.
I feel like there was like an episode of Evil Lives Here or something like that.
Oh,
that
you know, one of my sources was Evil Lives Here. I just used the transcript. I didn't watch it. I think it was from like a season 3 episode. And I know that it was told from the perspective of the family members.
Yeah.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's the premise of Evil Lives Here. It's but I can like see imagery in my mind from this, and so I was trying to place it, and so I'm sure that that's what it was. Evil Lives Here. Which, fun fact, my mom has been watching that this week.
It is good. I did watch an episode of Evil Lives Here for the Happy Face Killer, and that was like the backbone research of that case that I did, along with an episode of 2020. But no, this one I just was like, no, I'm just going to pull the transcript and look through it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't know what that would do, so I clicked it.
What the fuck was that? We got sound effects in here?
It's transition 5.
Well, I don't see that anywhere on here, so...
That was transition 2.
Okay, cool. And he had a son who served as his right hand, his first counselor, a former private school teacher and accountant named Warren Steed Jeffs.
Steed? Yeah, I'm sure.
Mighty Steed.
I'm sure.
He had to continue creating the brood. Warren had run the church's private school, Alta Academy, where he served as both a teacher and the principal. The children who grew up under him remembered the lessons. Boys and girls were to treat each other like snakes before marriage. No contact and no closeness. Girls received no education about their own bodies. They were told their husbands would teach them what they needed to know.
Nothing has changed.
We're all growing up under fundamentalists.
Well, I was going to say, was I educated by FLDS or...
Warren Steed
I can hear
Jeffs?
myself echo.
And above all of it, obey. To disobey was to risk being cast out, stripped of marriage, of salvation, of any place in the only community they had ever known. In the late 1990s, Rulon's health began to fail. He suffered a debilitating stroke, and as he declined, it was Warren who managed his affairs. Warren who spoke for the prophet. Warren who increasingly was the prophet in everything but title. A lot of this information comes from the actual court documents from the State versus Jeffs in 2010. And so I don't usually pull up the full legal record, but this one was I just found it fascinating. I just kept seeing Tony Goldwyn doing all of these things. So
Sure.
On Sunday, September 8th, 2002, Rulon Jeffs died at a hospital in St. George, Utah. He was 92. Officially, the church said a successor had not yet been named, that Rulon's son Warren and an acting bishop would hold things together until the question was settled. That question did not stay open for long. By the end of 2002, Warren Jeffs had succeeded his father as prophet, and with that title came control of the church, its followers, and its property.
Including but not limited to wives.
75 of them.
Or 19.
I think it brings the question, the people of Short Creek could not safely ask it aloud, but what does a man do when several thousand people believe that every word of his mouth is the will of God? And what's the price of doubting him?
Well, I think that you don't get to enjoy heaven.
Nope. I know how all of this unfolds, but absolute power absolutely corrupts. And I think that we see that in every facet of our day-to-day life. I think that we're in an era when we have our first trillionaire, and I'm over here create a tax that doesn't allow anyone to be more than a millionaire.
Yeah.
999 million, perfect. You don't need to be a billionaire, much less a trillionaire. So there's a doctrine at the heart of the FLDS, and it serves as the hinge for how this story kind of turns. The church teaches that God reveals to the prophet, and to only the prophet, which followers.
Yes, familiar.
Which followers should be joined in marriage. They call it placement marriage. You do not choose who you love. The prophet chooses for you. And to refuse the prophet's choice is to refuse God. There was a young girl named Alyssa Wall, and almost everything we know about to describe comes not from rumor, but from sworn testimony and a written opinion from the Utah Supreme Court. Alyssa Wall was raised in the FLDS. In 1999, when she was a child, she watched the machinery up close. Her father was deemed disobedient to church leaders, and his family was, in the language of the faith, stripped from him. Alyssa, her mother, and her siblings were removed from his home and reassigned to live with another man. Warren Jeffs himself performed the ceremony that married Alyssa's mother to that man as a plural wife. So by the time Alyssa was a teenager, she had already seen what happened to people who said no. In 2001, Alyssa Wall was 14 years old, and she was told to prepare herself for marriage. Alyssa objected. She said she was too young, and when she asked who she was meant to marry, she was told it would be revealed to her. A few days before the wedding, she got her answer. She was to marry Alan Steed, her 19-year-old first cousin. She did not want to. She said so. She said it to anyone who she thought might help. She got a meeting with the old prophet Rulon, and Warren was in the room. She begged. Could she wait until she was at least 16? Could she be placed with someone who wasn't her cousin? And the old man gave her an answer that she understood as mercy. Follow your heart, sweetie, Rulon told her. Follow your heart. She thought that meant that she was free. But after the meeting, it was Warren who corrected her. The prophet, Warren told her, wanted to remind her that this was the right thing to do and that she would go forward with this. In April of 2001, in a motel in Caliente, Nevada, Warren Jeffs performed the marriage of 14-year-old Alyssa Wall to her cousin. She cried throughout the ceremony, and when Jeffs asked if she took Alan Steed as her husband, she hung her head and said nothing. He asked again, nothing. Finally, her own mother stepped beside her, took her hand and squeezed it, and Alyssa managed 3 words. Okay, I do. And then Jeffs told them to go forth and multiply and replenish the earth with good priesthood children. And that's a direct quote.
Plenished. It's plenished. It's plenished.
It's overly plenished.
It's overplenished. Jesus.
What followed, Alyssa Wall would later testify, was rape. Her husband forced her, over her objections, weeks after a wedding that she'd been coerced into, while she was still, by the church's own design, kept ignorant of what sex even was. When she went back to Warren Jeffs and begged him for release from the marriage, he told her she needed to repent. He told her to go home and give herself to her husband, quote, mind, body, and soul, and obey without question. I want to, for right now, for you to hold on to Alyssa Wall and her story. Because 5 years from this moment, in a courtroom in St. George, Alyssa Wall will be the reason that Alyssa Wall will be key to making Warren Jeffs a convicted felon. And the legal question her case raises, can you charge the man who ordered the marriage with the rape that happened inside of it?
Could I challenge that idea a bit? I think the reason that he's a convicted felon.
This is why I said scratch reason.
No, you said, I think he was the key.
Sure.
She got eyes and ears on the case.
Yes.
Yeah.
She served as the conduit of justice, which shouldn't have been her responsibility. He is obviously responsible for his own, circumstances of being a convicted felon. That's why I immediately was like, I don't like that I put reason. I take it back, C's. No. I don't. Alyssa Wall is not responsible for his behavior.
No, yeah.
Alyssa Wall was not the only one. As Jeffs consolidated power, the accounts piling up against him multiplied, and they did not stay inside Short Creek. In 2005, authorities in Mojave County, Arizona, indicted Jeffs. You know, when I try to say words in Spanish, I think, develop a gayer accent. Mojave.
Okay.
Just when I said caliente, I was like, ooh, flamer, happy pride.
Happy pride, exactly. Exactly that.
Indicted Jeffs on charges of sexual conduct with a minor. Wow, I've got to say that again without laughing. Indicted Jeffs on oh my god. Okay. Indicted Jeffs on charges of sexual conduct with a minor and conspiracy to commit sexual conduct with a minor. Accusations that he had forced underage girls into marriages with older men. The Arizona County attorney who filed these charges had been building the case since 2005. And separately, prosecutors in Washington County, Utah, charged Jeffs in connection with Alyssa Wall's marriage, 2 first-degree felony counts of rape, as an accomplice. There was just one problem. By the time the charges were ready, Warren Jeffs was gone. He hadn't been seen in public since roughly 2004.
Till that paper plate.
And yet, by the accounts reaching investigators, he hadn't stopped. Arizona's Attorney General said he had information that Jeffs was still moving through the Hilldale and Colorado City area, performing more child bride marriages even while he was a fugitive. On the very day that Jeffs was captured, one of his own followers went on trial in Kingman, Arizona, accused of taking a 16-year-old as a second wife in a marriage that Jeffs had arranged. The break, when it came, didn't come from Warren, it came from his brother. And in October of 2005, Jeff's brother Seth was pulled over in a traffic stop in Pueblo, Colorado. Inside the car, police found more than $142,000 in cash, prepaid debit cards, prepaid phones, and a stack of documents tied to the FLDS.
Is this the same stop as the one that you mentioned at the start?
No. No,
okay,
this is a different
you
one.
said it was, what, 60,000
Yes.
in cash? Okay.
So this actually happened before the stop that I talked about at the very beginning, and that was actually one of Warren Jeffs. The one I'm talking about now is of Seth, who is the brother to Warren Jeffs, and it was in 2005. So at the stop, an insane amount of money, prepaid phones, and FLDS documents, and then letters addressed only to the prophet, and a jar of change labeled as pennies for the prophet. Seth Jeffs would plead guilty in federal court to harboring a fugitive. The message was unmistakable. Warren wasn't just hiding, he was being hidden, moved, and funded by a network of believers. So in May of 2006, the federal government escalated, and on May 6, the FBI added Warren Steed Jeffs to its 10 most wanted fugitives list and offered a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading to his arrest. The wanted poster laid it out. A man considered armed and dangerous, possibly traveling with armed bodyguards, with ties stretching across Utah, Arizona, Texas, Colorado, South Dakota, British Columbia, and Mexico. Alongside the state charges, a federal grand jury in Salt Lake City indicted him on account of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. And for roughly 3.5 months, Jeff Warrens stayed a ghost. Now, we're back on Interstate 15.
Okay.
The trooper on the night of August 28, 2006, didn't pull over a fugitive because of a tip or a stakeout, but again, because the plate on the new red Escalade was obscured. He looked at the thin man in the passenger seat, the man who had just given him a fake name, and realized the face matched the wanted posters that had been circulating to law enforcement across the country since May. Warren Jeffs was arrested without incident. In the vehicle with him were one of his wives, Naomi Jeffs, and his brother Isaac. Both were questioned and released. He was booked at the Clark County Detention Center in the small hours of the morning. The FBI noted, almost as bookkeeping, that this was his 453rd arrest, that this was the 453rd arrest and its most wanted program since the effort to catch fugitives began in 1950. So
in the 1900s.
In the 1950s is crazy. Which
in
is,
the 1950s.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he was the 453rd arrest from the FBI's most wanted list. The next day at a press conference outside the FBI's Las Vegas field office, the agent in charge stood up and praised a single state trooper who noticed a covered license plate. The manhunt was over, but the thing about catching a man is that it's not the same as convicting him. And convicting Warren Jeffs was going to be much, much harder than anyone standing at that press conference wanted to admit. So different state governments and prosecution teams decided that they would try Jeff's Utah's case first. Before it even got to trial, there was a sign of how strange this would be. In 2007, while he was in custody, Warren Jeffs attempted to take his own life. He survived and the proceedings moved forward. The trial opened in St. George, Utah in the fall of 2007. The charge was not that Warren Jeffs had personally assaulted Alyssa Wall. The charge was more subtle, and it would prove to be the case's fatal weakness. That Jeffs, by coercing a 14-year-old girl into a marriage and then ordering her to submit to her husband, was an accomplice to rape, legally responsible as a party for the assaults that followed. The centerpiece was Alyssa Wall herself, By now, in her early 20s, she took the stand and told the jury what it had been like to be 14 and told that God required this of her. She testified that her cousin forced her to have sex about 6 weeks after the ceremony, despite her cries for him to stop. On September 25th, 2007, the jury found Warren Jeffs guilty on both counts of rape as an accomplice. The reaction outside the church was relief. Inside it, defiance.
Yeah.
And the day after the conviction, prosecutors charged Alan Steed, Alyssa's former husband, with rape. On November 20th, 2007, Judge James Shoemate, I think it's Shoemate, it's Shumate. I would say Shoemate.
Shumate.
Shumat. Shumati. Sentenced to
Wally.
Stupid. So dumb, Cameron.
I would like the record to reflect that most of the dumb stuff stays inside my head. Like earlier, when you said something that made me sing a Miley Cyrus song in my head. Or earlier, when you made me sing a Smash Mouth song in my head. Or earlier, when you made me sing a different song that I can't remember in my head. And something from the Hamilton soundtrack. So you know what? Most of the dumb stuff stays inside. Let me have that one silly song lyric slip.
I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that one of the comments we've received on our YouTube is someone saying, "I love how you laugh right after you tell her how smart she is."
Yeah. Quick to say that something I've said is stupid, though. I have noticed. Good to see that the patriarchy is still alive, well, and hurting everyone. Carry on.
It was such a crazy comment to read. I was like, surely I didn't do that. Of course I did that.
You did. You did.
For the record, I think Cameron's very smart. I think there's a lot of times she's smarter than me. And so, listener, please know that was not hateful. I just can't take hardly anything seriously.
Clearly, this is not what he says offline.
Right.
When the record button is not activated, he's not saying anything about me being smart.
That is such a lie.
He's berating me and talking about how stupid and little my woman brain is and how weak my little woman arms are, and
this bitch is not weak.
He bullies me.
I'll tell you that. She is not weak. She is strong.
It would be so crazy.
Physically strong, strong-willed, strong-minded.
It would be really crazy to think that in a different country, in a different continent, that you could remotely force me to do this podcast. Because that's what is being said, right? If you're sitting there saying, haha, like, oh yeah, you're so smart, and then starting to laugh and then actually doing any of the things that I just said that you do, we wouldn't be doing this unless you were forcing us to do it.
Yeah. Which is crazy, because
that would be the craziest.
That would be so... We know how good I am at getting here and doing this. Okay, where was I? And the day after the conviction, prosecutors charged Alyssa... No. And the day after the conviction, prosecutors charged Alan Steed, Alyssa's former husband and first cousin and assaulter, with rape. On November 20th, 2007, Judge James Shoemate sentenced Jeffs to 2 consecutive prison terms of 5 years to life, plus a $37,000 fine. Consecutive, meaning he'd serve at least 10 years before he could ask for parole. Alyssa Wall stood at the courtroom podium and spoke. Warren Jeffs and his influence over me as a 14-year-old girl affected me and my family in so many ways. Utah's Attorney General put it more bluntly afterwards. Jeffs can believe whatever he wants, but he's going to prison for his actions, which led to the rape of a child. It looked like an ending. Prophet caught, prophet convicted, prophet sentenced. Unfortunately,
Prophet is crazy. I mean, I know that's what he fancies himself, but I think people might take issue with the idea that prophets would be convicted of things.
I don't know. You read the Old Testament and these people were doing crazy shit and were, you know what? I don't want to get there. I don't want to go there. Let me just stop now. It was nothing of the kind. It was nothing of the kind.
Have you seen the guy who I'm assuming is on TikTok? I see him on Instagram or Facebook, one of the older people apps. But he does this book review and he talks about going to book club of the Holly Bible.
I have not seen that.
Those are quite good. Talks about the weird book clubs on Sundays.
Jeff's lawyers had told reporters on the courthouse steps exactly what they intended to do. Appeal and reverse the verdict, and the legal theory they were going to attack. That an efficient could be an accomplice to a rape he didn't physically commit. Was in fact vulnerable. Keep that appeal in your back pocket for now. It's going to detonate in 2010. But
my back pocket is getting full. This is the second thing you've asked me to stick there.
We've taken Alyssa out of it.
Okay.
Her role is largely complete. But before it does, the entire center of gravity of this story is about to move 4 states east to a ranch in the Texas scrub that almost nobody outside the FLDS knew existed.
And you know how we feel about scrubs.
A scrub is a guy that thinks he's fine. While Jeffs was running, and then while he was sitting in a Utah courtroom, the FLDS had been quietly building a second world. Out in the West Texas brush near El Dorado in Schreiner County, the church had bought land and put up a compound it called the Yearning for Zion Ranch, or YFZ, named according to people who knew Jeffs after a song he had written. They built homes, workshops, and at the center of it, an enormous white temple. To the people who moved there, it was a refuge. To the state of Texas, it would become a crime scene. On March 29, 2008, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services received a phone call. A girl, she said she was 16. Excuse me, I said that's so odd. A girl who said she was 16 reported that she was being sexually assaulted and physically abused on the ranch by a much older man she'd been married to. On April 3rd, 2008, Texas authorities went in. What they found is part of the official record of the Texas Supreme Court, so I'm going to try to stick exactly to what that record says. Investigators conducted 19 interviews of girls aged 17 and under. They learned that a number of underage girls on the ranch were pregnant or had already given birth. They seized the church's own internal bishop's records, and those documents described a 13-year-old who had conceived a child, 2 pregnant 15-year-old wives, and more. The records described the ranch's religious leader as holding the unilateral power to decide when and to whom girls were married. When investigators walked the property, they found a community that looked deliberately stranded in another century. Women in long frontier-style prairie dresses with 19th century haircut, and underage girls who were visibly and unmistakably pregnant. The state's response was the largest action of its kind in American history. Texas removed more than 400 children from the ranch into protective custody. Also, just an FYI, there was a little bit of discord in the records at the number exactly. In one report, I believe NPR said more than 450, but the Associated Press said nearly 400. And then there were some other figures like 416, 439, all of these random numbers between 400 and 450. And so I can't give you an exact number, but I'm just going to say more than 400.
Okay.
And then the case the state had built came apart. The phone call that started it all, the 16-year-old girl on the ranch, turned out to be a hoax. The caller was never found, and on May 29, 2008, the Texas Supreme Court ruled in its own words that on the record before us, removal of the children was not warranted. The state had reached too far, sweeping up boys and young children for whom there was no evidence of immediate danger. The children were ordered returned home to their families. For Texas, it looked like a humiliation. Hundreds of children taken, then handed back on a tip that wasn't real. But here is the hinge.
How would that be humiliating? The tip may not have been real, but they acted in what they believed to be the best interest of the children. And there was some crazy shit going on out there.
What I kind of meant is they ended up returning these children. They weren't able to prove that they should be retained in custody instead of returned to those families.
Yeah, I just think that the more humiliating thing would be if they hadn't acted and then found out that the action was warranted.
That's fair. Maybe in this instance, I'm not giving Texas enough credit.
Well, it's done a number on itself, on its own credibility.
So, while the raid had kind of failed as a child welfare action, at the very same time, it had succeeded as something else. Because while the lawyers argued about custody, investigators were sitting on the contents of the ranch. The bishop's records, photographs, audio recordings, and Jeff's own voluminous writings. Evidence that Warren Jeffs, by his own meticulous documentation, had built his life around the very crimes Texas had just walked into. The children went home, the evidence stayed, and Texas began to build a different kind of case. Not about custody, but about Warren Jeffs himself. Now, the appeal that I told you to put in your back pocket goes off. And on July 27th, 2010, the Utah Supreme Court reversed both of Warren Jeffs' convictions and ordered a new trial. I want to be precise about why. It is not what Jeffs' followers claimed. The court did not say that Jeffs was innocent. It did not say that Alyssa Wall wasn't telling the truth. It said the jury had been given the wrong legal instructions. Under Utah law, sexual intercourse is without consent, in quotes, without consent in several circumstances, including when the actor holds a position of special trust over a victim under 18. At trial, the jury had been told to look at Jeff's position of trust, Jeffs the prophet, to decide whether Alyssa had consented. But the person who had actually had sex with Alyssa wasn't Jeffs.
Yeah.
It was her husband. And the Supreme Court held that the word actor had to mean the person who committed the act, the husband, not the man who arranged the marriage. By focusing the jury on Jeff's authority instead of the husband's, the instructions had, in the court's words, been in error, and that error was serious enough to require reversal. I think there's a cruel irony in this ruling. The thing that made Warren Jeffs so dangerous, that he never had to lay a hand on anyone, that his power was the power to command, was the same thing for that moment that let him slip from the charge. That very structure of control was also the kind of legal escape hatch that he was able to use.
But isn't that the same thing that Charlie Manson did? Charles Manson? Old Chuck?
You know, please check. I am not familiar with Charles Manson. I know he's big, but I've literally never consumed anything about the Manson stuff.
He gained notoriety for ordering the Tate LaBianca murders, where his followers murdered 9 people around Los Angeles in 1969. He was charged with 7 first-degree murder counts and conspiracy to commit murder. But I don't think he was present at any of the murders. Yeah, no, he was not present at the murders, but was convicted. Okay, yeah, go on.
With the convictions vacated, Utah faced a retrial on a theory that the state's highest court had just gutted, and lawyers on both sides said openly that the ruling would make winning a second trial difficult. Utah didn't just drop the case outright. Not yet, anyway. Instead, the state stepped back and said, okay, Texas, you go first. So here, in the summer of 2010, Arizona's charges have collapsed entirely. In June 2010, a Mojave County judge dismissed all 4 of them with prejudice after the alleged victims said they would rather see Jeff's face the more serious charges waiting in Texas. The Utah convictions are gone. The Texas child custody case collapsed 2 years earlier. Warren Jeffs, who had been caught, tried, convicted, and sentenced, is now a man on paper with no convictions at all. Texas extradited Jeffs, and in the summer of 2011, the case finally came to trial in San Angelo in Tom Green County before the district judge Barbara Walther. So stupid, but it was funny. This Barbara Walther is wild. Walther.
It's just so close.
This time the charges were not subtle theories of accomplice liability. This time they were direct, aggravated sexual assault of a child and sexual assault of a child. The 2 victims were a 12-year-old girl and a 15-year-old girl whom Jeffs had taken as so-called celestial or spiritual wives. And then Warren Jeffs did something almost no defendant facing life in prison does. On the day the trial began, he fired his lawyers and chose to represent himself.
Where's my Abe Lincoln quote?
So stupid.
See, you're so quick. So quick.
This Warren Jeffs, like, what? It makes me wonder if he had started... Well, actually, I feel like he probably fully believed that he was some kind of prophet, that God would reveal to him the answers to his problems, or that he would be so charismatic or know what to say. Why would you fire the only people who would be able to help you in that moment?
As somebody who is probably not... I probably do not meet the criteria to be labeled as someone with narcissistic personality disorder, I cannot explain why he would make that choice.
It's unfathomable. Prosecutors believed the firings were a stalling tactic. Over months, he had hired and dismissed attorney after attorney, often just before a critical hearing. This time, the judge refused to delay. Throughout, Jeffs insisted he was the victim. He was being persecuted for his religion. At one point,
that has been my takeaway as I have listened to this. The persecution.
At one point, Jeffs warned the court that God had told him if the proceedings didn't stop, God would strike them with illness. The state was unmoved, and the evidence it had, the evidence carried out of that Texas ranch in 2008, was overwhelming. A forensic analyst testified that Warren Jeffs was an almost certain DNA match to the child of the 15-year-old girl, and that he had fathered a baby with her. And then prosecutors did arguably the hardest thing in that courtroom. They played an audio recording. On it, according to the state, was Warren Jeffs sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl. On the recording, he says the child's name out loud more than once.
Yuck.
I don't feel like describing that tape, especially beyond anything that's required to just talk about the court case.
Yeah.
But, momentarily taking a second with what it meant that existed, that Warren Jeffs had made it himself, that he recorded it. The engine of Jeff's power were his thousands of pages of revelation, instruction, and command. The way his voice was broadcast into believers' home. But in the end, it also became the engine of his conviction. In his own writings from 2005, prosecutors found the line and read it to the jury. If the world knew what I was doing, they would hang me from the highest tree. The recordings and the DNA were the spine of the case, but they weren't the whole of it. Documents introduced at trial described a man who had built a system. By the state's account of his own records, Jeff had officiated...
Offici that walk.
Happy Pride!
Ginny, you weren't supposed to move.
Jeff's had officiated at least 550 plural marriages, 67 of them involving underage girls.
Not 6, 7.
Okay. And had taken some 78 wives, 24 of which were underage. A few were as young as 12. In one instance, the records noted he married 2 12-year-old girls to himself on the same day.
Can you officiate your own wedding?
I can't imagine it would be a problem if you're the prophet and
what
the
about
leader of your own.
What about officiate?
Officiate! Yes, offici, eat down. Prosecutors told the court they had assembled a list of more than 600 separate, quote, bad acts by Jeffs to draw on in the punishment phase. And some of the testimony was harder to sit through. Among the witnesses was Jeff's own nephew, Brent Jeffs, who testified that his uncle had sexually assaulted him when he was a young boy. On August 4th, 2011, after deliberating for only a few hours, a jury convicted Warren Jeffs on both counts. There was still the matter of punishment, and here Jeffs made his final eerie choice. He boycotted his own sentencing. He ordered his attorneys, the standby lawyers he now refused, to call no witnesses and make no argument on his behalf. When it was his turn to speak for his own life, he stood, by some accounts, in near total silence. The prosecutor, Eric Nichols, gave the closing Jeffs would not. He rejected the idea that this had ever been about religion. This is a prosecution to protect people, Nichols told the jury. And he turned Jeff's own words back on him. That line about the highest tree, and answered it. We don't hang convicts from the highest tree anymore, Nichols said. Not even child molesters. On August 9th...
I mean, unless there are no trees in the prison yard.
Jesus. On August 9th,
not fun for child rapists in prison.
as it shouldn't be.
Right.
On August 9th, 2011, the jury was out for less than 30 minutes. They returned the maximum, life in prison for the aggravated sexual assault of the 12-year-old, plus 20 years for the sexual assault of the 15-year-old. The Texas Department of Public Safety, which had run the investigation alongside the Texas Rangers and Attorneys General and the Attorney General's office, issued a statement the same day. Jeffs, it noted, was the 8th member of the FLDS convicted of sexually assaulting children in the wake of the raid. The 7 before him had drawn sentences ranging from 6 to 75 years. It sends a clear message to would-be pedophiles, the DPS director wrote. The sexual exploitation of children will not be tolerated in Texas.
Was Jeffs an immigrant?
Not that I know of. I believe that his father was an American citizen.
No. Do you know if he ever cross-dressed?
I don't know that.
Dressed in drag, maybe?
None of that is noted.
Weird. But the leader of a church, of a religious organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I think that's a perfect illustration of why it's so important to have things like Pride Month.
Yeah.
Thankfully, this time the conviction and sentencing stuck. Now, I would love to tell you that Warren Jeff's power came to an end with his incarceration. Within weeks of the sentence, Jeff's body nearly gave out. At the end of August 2011, after a prison fast that ran for days, Jeffs was hospitalized in critical condition. Early reports described a medically induced coma. Officials later clarified that he had pneumonia after the fast and was expected to recover. And he did.
Good.
The last loose legal thread were quietly tied off. On November 9th, 2011, 3 months after the Texas verdict, Utah formally dismissed the charges it had been holding since the reversal. A Washington County prosecutor explained that Jeff's already serving a life sentence in Texas, that trying him was not in the interest of justice to put Alyssa Wall through a second trial. Arizona had let its case go the year before. When it was over, of all the charges in all the states, it was Texas, and only Texas, that held. But from his cell, Jeffs kept ruling. And this is the part that's hard for some outsiders to believe. Let me anchor it into the record. According to reporting that draws on the Texas prison system and on FLDS members themselves, Jeffs, held in protective custody to keep him safe from other inmates, at times received more than 1,000 letters a day from followers. Prison officials came to suspect that his brothers used recording devices hidden in items like watches and pins to capture their weekly meetings with him, and that he sent out coded letters that wives on the outside could decipher. His own daughter, who later left the church, alleged that even years into his sentence, her father remained in full control of the FLDS. And if I remember correctly, there is a clip from that movie with Tony Goldwyn where he's just smiling menacingly from his jail cell. His group did loosen in places. The church has lost hundreds of members since his imprisonment and has lost effective control of parts of Short Creek. A one-time follower named Samuel Bateman broke away and declared himself a prophet in his own right in open defiance of Jeff. The empire fractured, but the man at the center of it has never publicly let go. It's worth pausing on the scale of what he built, because it helps explain why it didn't simply collapse when the cell door shut. After taking over the church, Jeffs married several of his father's own widows. Among them, Naomi Jeffs, the wife who had been in the SUV the night he was caught, and who served as his scribe. By one reckoning reported years later, he took roughly 80 women and girls as wives, though the marriages were spiritual rather than legal. His authority reached into the smallest corner of the followers' lives, what they could wear, what toys the children could hold, whether they could watch television or touch the internet at all. He has even been said to have banned the color red outright. At his Texas sentencing, a former member of the church, once a wife of Jeff's own father, walked in wearing a deliberate, defiant red dress. In the years since, 2 of Jeff's own children, no longer in the church, have publicly accused their father of sexual abuse, and in 2022, more than a decade into his sentence, a written edict surfaced, purportedly from Jeff's, distributed by one of his sons, urging those who had left to come back and hinting that the prophet himself might one day walk free. So where is Jeffs now? As of this recording, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice's own inmate record lists Warren Steed Jeffs, inmate number 017267005, as 70 years old and held at the Louis C. Powledge Unit in Anderson County, Texas. His maximum sentence is recorded as a life sentence for cumulative offenses. He has no projected release date, and his parole eligibility date is listed as July 22nd, 2038. Reporting on his daily life describes him held in protective custody, kept apart from other inmates for his own safety, which feels totally unfair.
Yeah. They picked out the tallest tree.
Yeah. I feel ever more American every time I report on a case like this, because I'm like, hey, how bad can prison really be? Let's make it a little worse. Let's get rid of protective custody. And I don't know. I think if I really look inside myself, I don't know if I actually believe that, but I feel like harming a child is the worst offense. And obviously murder is terrible. Murder is awful. There's no reversing it. There's no EMDRing it. There's no therapizing it. We can't fix it or even try to fix it. But harming a child who is defenseless, who has no other option, has no recourse, or seemingly no recourse, and then to be put into protective custody. It feels really unfair to the people who were harmed.
Unless you suspect that that innocent child's mother stole diapers.
Mm-hmm. And then shoot the child in the car.
Wonder if that guy will be convicted, and if so, if he'll be put in protective custody. Or even charged. Who knows? What a fun place.
There was an officer on SAPD that was fired for feeding a homeless man a sandwich with dog feces in it. And that was like 4 or 5 years ago. And now he's serving as the police chief for another Texas police department.
But you know what? Like, the Europeans are really loving the brisket, so...
Listen, the Europeans on TikTok for this World Cup have made me feel like I live a life of luxury. From aircon to the validation of, oh shit, it is way hotter here. Like, this is fucking nuts. And they're like, oh god, it's so humid here. And I was like, wait, I thought that was y'all's thing. I thought being hot and humid was your thing.
Yep.
To being fucking losing their mind when they see how many kinds of Oreos there are. And I'm like, I live like a king. Do you
know that I had the same experience when I got here, but not for Oreos, for Kit Kats? All of the different types of Kit Kats that they have here. I'm like, what is this? What is all this? I need to try them all. What do you mean you have a coffee flavor? You have a mocha flavored Kit Kat. You have a mint chocolate flavored Kit Kat. What do you mean? All these other flavors that I would never try. But, like, the fact that they're there, I mean, we really hit my two, right? Regular chocolate, mocha, or mint chocolate. That's my...
Them taking pictures of themselves with, like, gallons of milk. And I'm like, what, y'all don't have milk? You don't...
Yeah, we do.
Is it in gallons?
We do. It's in... I don't know. I don't buy a ton of milk, but, like, I get something that's a little bit taller than what I would get in the U.S., but it's narrower. So it's just not as fat. Which
they're losing their fucking minds. They're holding it up like this, and they're like, "Oh!" And then when they see like the gallons of Arizona tea, they're like just mind blown. It is my drug to watch Europeans experience the USA.
Like they've never been to Tesco.
They walk into Walmart and they're like, "Can you believe the size of this?" What I've loved is that some of them have like gone into places like Target. And then they post videos of their Target back home. And I'm like, well, no wonder you're losing your fucking mind. Why? There's so much consumerism in the United States. We are living in the latest stage of capitalism. And it's destroying the planet. It's destroying us. But again, God, those videos make me feel like I am just royal. And then I have reminders from you, well, a medical issue could bankrupt you. So
I'm like, I don't think I've ever been on a vacation that I wouldn't have gladly traded my life for. Like, wow, this is really great. I don't have responsibilities. I don't have to pay taxes. I don't have to worry about insurance. Yeah, no fucking shit. I'm drinking all day, walking and going and seeing really cool things that I don't typically get to see. Yeah, I love vacation too. And I'm so sick of the people saying in the comments of those videos, see, America isn't as terrible as the liberals make it seem. The liberals all hate America. And I'm like, turns out you don't actually understand, because people who are liberal don't hate America. They hate what America has become because they actually love the country. And they know that it can be better than it is. And it should be better than it is.
The comments I see are like, sorry, America's fantastic. We're just under really bad management right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing some of that too, which is true, but it isn't just right now.
I also probably see a lot more, like I see more stuff on TikTok than I do Instagram. And I think that it is kind of a different user base. Yeah,
and Instagram is usually really negative in the comments.
Yeah, and on TikTok people are like, fuck yeah, enjoy our country. Enjoy it while you still can.
But I see that on Instagram too. Yeah.
So
there are positives and negatives about all of them. I mean, there are things that they appreciate at home that they haven't even had to think about while they've been in the U.S. And it's just I don't know. It doesn't give me the same sense of pride. It gives me the sense of like, yeah, but it's not all of those things that you're doing, going and hitting all of these chain restaurants to talk about how great they are. Yeah, it's in part because the food can be modified more than it can where you come from. Like,
I think it's interesting and of course there are different cultures, but a lot of the British people that I've seen in the US for the World Cup making videos are like, it's just so warm and friendly here. Like, people talk, they're nice, you feel like everyone is welcome. And I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's not really always the case. Not everyone always feels welcome.
yeah.
But if you're from a country where people don't say hi to each other just to say hi, then it probably does feel really warm and welcoming.
But you know what? I feel like I have been spoken to and greeted and acknowledged so much more since I got here. And I want to know what percentage of people engaging with you and being really positive with you has to do with your accent.
Maybe.
Because the British accent in particular is considered to be one of the most charming accents that there is. It's like Welsh and then British, and then I imagine Australian ranks higher than Ireland and Scotland.
I do want to clarify, just for the sake of transparency, I was able to pull a lot of his sentencing information directly from the TDCJ website, and that is verified as true. The only bit of information that isn't produced from TDCJ documents is protective custody. The state of Texas doesn't release that information, and that comes from secondary sources. I keep coming back to the motel room in Caliente, Nevada in the spring of 2001. A 14-year-old girl hanging her head, saying nothing, while a man tells her that God requires this. It took the law more than a decade, a manhunt, a conviction, a reversal, a failed raid, hundreds of children taken and returned, and finally a second trial in a Texas courthouse to answer the thing Alyssa Wall already knew at 14, that a man can tell you that he speaks for God and still be a criminal. In 2017, Alyssa Wall said something at Warren Jeff's first sentencing before any of the rest of it had happened, and it's where I want to leave you. She said that she hoped good would come of this. Warren Jeffs recorded everything so that his followers would always have his voice. In the end, that same voice is most of the reason that he will, in all likelihood, die in a Texas prison cell. And that's my case.
Let's hope that he does die in a Texas prison cell.
Fingies crossed.
Not fingies.
Fingies crossed.
It's always, it's horrible, but it's always really refreshing in these cases when somebody from inside stands up and says, no, this is wrong. I always wonder, where did they learn that from? If she was, because it was Alyssa, right, who when she was 14 was forced to marry her cousin, and yes. She was still young enough that it makes me wonder, where did she learn that was wrong? Because if you're growing up being told that this is how things are, where does that come from? It didn't just come from her. It came from her in part, but it's like there's a larger underlying rebellion taking place.
Well, and it brings up the question of, part of seeing that Warren Jeffs controlled what TV was watched, if the internet could be accessed. And it makes me wonder if there weren't possibilities that maybe those children were exposed to something when the family was watching television, or if they were watching television, or if they had access to the internet, or if maybe they saw something about polygamy. I don't know. But I think that's a really interesting question. I don't know if there is, and I know you know this, I don't know if there's an answer to it, but...
Well, you did well, friend.
Thank you. It wasn't as long as you thought it was going to be, right?
No, we're just shy of 2 hours, and quite a bit of that is things that will be cut.
Yeah, us just fucking around.
Yeah.
that's all we've got for this episode. Oh, whoa.
JK.
Bro, the amount of AI that they put into everything now, like, I don't need Google Docs to offer me to
offer AI. Yeah, I saw that this morning.
Let me just put the shit in. I already did it.
Yeah.
Let me just... Okay, that being said, if this episode has affected you personally, support for survivors of sexual abuse is available through RAIN's National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673. You can also use the online chat function at RAIN, RAINN.org. And that's all we've got for this episode. Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.
If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review.
The link to join our supportive bestie tier on Patreon for only $2 a month is listed in the show notes.
Also, make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com, so feel free to reach out with questions or episode suggestions.